Welcome to Brick by Brick, a podcast produced by Move Your Mind, committed to changing the construction industry, one conversation at a time. A really important word when it comes to making change in mental health and any other area is sustainability. Michelle Nation is the General Manager of Health, Sustainability and Climate at John Holland. She talks about mental health in the construction industry, what they are doing at John Holland to improve the climate and sustainability of the future, and shares her own insights on a number of topics. If you'd like to find out more, you can go to nickbracks.com or you can purchase the Move Your Mind book at nickbracks.com/book. Michelle, thank you so much for making the time to come on the podcast. Really appreciate the work you're doing, and you're telling me before you're listening to the podcast during COVID, which means a huge amount. And also we connected that, you're living in the same sort of area that I grew up in. So it's a small world in Melbourne, isn't it? It's everyone's connected in some sort of way.
Yeah, very much so. And interestingly, as much as Australia's a really big country, construction's actually a really small industry as well. So I always say to my team, if you haven't worked with someone or for someone, you'll be working with them in the future. And I think that's still very much true today.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point, and it sort of seems that way in so many parts of the world, whether it's an industry or a city you're in or wherever it is. It can seem such a big thing from the outside. Or I've been living in New York, and it's such a big, overwhelming city. But then once you live there, it almost seems small in other ways because you see the same people around, and I don't know. It's just once you sort of dive into something, you and get into the nuance of it, you see how small a lot of these things are in a good way. So it's such an important industry, and it's been crazy since we started having these conversations, just how much response we've had just by, I guess, talking to different people in the industry and having conversations that I guess probably haven't happened that much through a podcast format. And it's really made us more passionate as well about getting involved in the construction industry, just seeing how great of an industry it is, and how many changes are happening in it. And things we'll touch on about females being more represented in the industry, and all these different areas. And I think it's just so important that we talk about it and educate people.
It really is a amazing how broad this industry is and how many it touches. I'm really lucky. I've got a lot of family and friends that work in the industry. But even a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting, not that it's a nice topic, I was sitting at a funeral, and the people sitting behind me were chatting about, oh, when do you go back to work? He said, oh, I'm actually working on that, on something around the project. I sort of leant in listening, and he said, oh, yeah. Oh, I'm still on that Melbourne Metro project as well. And I sort of wanted to slide around, not that it was the right time, and say, that's my project. I look after that as well. So you don't realise how broad it is, either from, suppliers and just general people that are touched due to the sheer size of our industry as well. It has a really broad impact. My husband was saying this morning, because he's also in the industry, he's got his name on his shirt, and he said, oh, the nicest lady who gets my coffee every morning, and she always says, Damien, oat latte. And he thought, oh, that's really good. And then he said he got in the car and looked and realised his name's on his shirt. So, even the people that make our coffee are impacted by our projects and where they're located.
Yeah, that's actually something that's come up so many times on this podcast, where people are, so proud to be part of these projects, and also it's connected, and it's sort of it's tangible, where so many things in life now, even this, where we're on a screen, and it's great that we can connect, but so much is intangible, so much is technology, and the fact that these are, you can look at these projects, they're binding people together. It's such a refreshing thing, I think, to be part of. And it's I don't know, it's something that I've just heard every interview pretty much, people when they're talking about the benefits of the industry and the things that really excite them about being part of it. It's something that comes up a lot of the time.
And I think it's pride. Like for me,
Yeah.
I get, so much pride out of looking at things we've built, because like I said, you can physically see or touch them or show them off. And growing up in the west of Melbourne many years ago, I was involved in the West Footscray train station redevelopment, which is just a beautiful, sounds really crazy, really beautiful piece of architecture in quite a older area of Melbourne. And I used to drive past with the kids, or I worked for the train company and they had a big M on the side, and I say, oh, they're mum's trains, with the big M, or the station. I'd say, running joke, oh, mum built that all by herself. Because like I said, like you say, you can touch it, or you drive over a bridge, or on a new train, or even walking in. I took a group of senior females into the Westgate Tunnel project recently, just before the breakthrough, and I take it for granted to agree that the size and scale of some of the infrastructure we build, but this was a bunch of amazing women, but they were lawyers and all different backgrounds, and they were like little kids with Tonka trucks, these huge bright eyes, saying, "This is amazing. Can I take photos? Can I FaceTime my kids?" And selfishly, I'm like, "Are they daughters? Can please
Yeah.
show them off, show them the amazing scale?" But like I said, I'm always in awe of what our teams build and what they construct. But when you get to show it off, even when it's in that interim phase, it was really humbling to see people just walking through saying, "This is so cool what you're building." And I've got the luxury of sort of traveling around Australia and seeing different communities, and how we're having an impact, not just because of the infrastructure we build, but the communities that we're working in.
Yeah, it's such an amazing thing, and there really is something in just being able to see these projects, and the magnitude of them is incredible. So it's yeah, no, a really really great thing. So on that note, are you able to tell us a little bit about what your role is and how you came to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I think I'm like a lot of people in construction. I probably haven't followed a traditional route necessarily. So, my current role, I'm the general manager for health, sustainability, and climate with John Holland. And I look after the major projects and the infrastructure projects around Australia. But as much as my role is now in that space, I actually started doing an environment degree as an undergraduate, and sort of tripped through different roles, or just said yes to lots of different roles, and really thought I was going to sort of save the planet. And back then it was very much about trees and plants and birds and the
Mm.
environment. And here I am, sort of, I feel like I've almost come full circle, and we've got this absolute call to arms around climate change and the planet as a whole, that it's, as much as our birds and plants and trees are still really important, my role and my position now looking at the sustainability is really at the forefront. And it's an exciting and scary place to be in, looking at where we are, as a planet, and having two teenage daughters, looking at what we need to do as an industry to really step up, and step up quickly, I think is the challenge. They say that about 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions comes from the built environment. So not only is it a challenge, but it's a huge opportunity, and with that comes some really exciting innovations, and very smart people that are getting their chance to impact what we're building and how we build it.
Yeah, well, I mean that. Yeah, it really is. It's an opportunity to make such an impact, and like you're saying, it's something that I guess we all know climate change is a big issue, but a lot of the the stuff you're talking about there, I think a lot of people wouldn't be aware of. So I guess are you able to give a little bit more information on the problem when it comes to climate change in the industry, and I guess the positives of where it's where you're trying to take it to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges is, as much as we innovate and we change and we develop in the industry that we work in, we still really rely quite heavily on concrete and steel. So when we're looking at products, there's a huge driver at the moment, and we're working really collaboratively with a lot of research and development teams. And I know a lot of my amazing team are working with universities, and looking at product substitutions or product changes. So the best way we can really make that impact is in those really early days of design, and how we're looking at what we build and where we build it. But the good thing is that's a conversation now that's being had up front. So the research and development piece, I think, is going to move really quickly in Australia and outside of Australia, because the demand's there, and not just
Mhm.
by our industry, but the next generations are coming up, and they're looking for this change, and they'll expect it.
Yeah, that's exactly. They'll expect it, and they probably just won't. The next generations just won't accept it not to change, is which is such a positive.
It's interesting because I started my career predominantly in the safety space, and safety, or OHS as we used to refer to it, was very much, making sure you had the right PPE on, and obviously looking at,
Mm,
high risk activities, that we looked after people's safety and kept people safe on the job and managed the risk. And then over time, it moved into uh, other areas like mental health and different spaces, because those early OHS areas were just a given. It was a given that you would keep people safe when they come to work. And I
mm.
think things like mental health and that broader sustainability piece, we're really seeing that move into just an expectation of people that if I come to work, here are the building blocks, or what I expect from you as my employer, or the people providing me with the work. So it, like I said, it's an exciting space to be in. It's just making sure that we're moving fast enough as an industry.
And is that overwhelming? I mean, it's exciting, but it's just such a monumental task. I can imagine it would just be never ending, all consuming. You probably have to also, when we talk about mental health, you probably have to be careful to not burn yourself out and keep balance and not let it be all consuming.
Yeah, it's yeah, very much. And whether you say eat the elephant or boil the ocean, you sort of want to do everything tomorrow. And I guess that's part of my personality as well, is I want to make change, I want to fix it, and I want to do that for, my kids and my teammates and everything else. But it can be really overwhelming. I think our industry is traditionally known as somewhere where, we work hard, we work long hours. Someone like myself, I travel a lot with work. um, COVID was a perfect example. My phone was on 24 hours a day, and we were changing legislation and environments and things every day, and you had to adapt and work to it. And even now, I respond to incidents or challenges that people may have on the projects. So my phone's always on, and you're
Mm.
right. Sometimes, I can be honest and say sometimes it is really, really overwhelming. And we started this chat saying that I listen to podcasts when I walk the dog, or go for a run, and finding that balance sometimes is hard. So all the best intentions around my own mental health or my team's mental health is great, but sometimes you do find that physical impact where you've just done too much and you've tried too hard, or just haven't listened to your body, or haven't listened to your mind. And I'm really, really lucky. I've got a very supportive family, but I've also got some amazing teammates. And I say team, they're not my employees or my work, they're my team. And
Mm.
even on Friday night, I was interstate last week with work, which was wonderful. And I'm very much a connection person. So I love being on site, not just to see the cool infrastructure, but also talk to people and see how the team's going. But Friday night, my flight was delayed, and I had all these things on my mind of what I needed to do. And I sat down on the couch, and just one of my team said, yeah, it's a bit of a running joke, but she said, "Hey, boss, hope you're okay. Watch the cats this weekend," or whatever. And just to know that you have that support really does make a difference. And this is something I try and foster in my team. And I'm still a bit of work in progress with the kids, but I'm trying to sort of really encourage them that, that's okay. You don't have to, especially because their world's very different to ours now. They're just connected
Yeah.
to their phones. So, but to have someone actually just say, "Hey, boss, have a great weekend," or "Hope you had a good week," is really important, because that mental health balance can be pretty tricky sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's such an important thing, and it's just those little things that make a big difference, and that sense of connection and community, and having that environment fostered. It really does help in on so many levels. It's just yeah, it's a super important thing, and something that we need to nurture. And I think also the point you said about you'll try and maintain balance, but you can't always maintain balance, and no one can. But I think having the awareness of it and being able to be honest with yourself about, okay, I'm getting to a point where I'm about to burn out. I need to take a step back or do this, and accepting that we're not going to always get it right, and that doesn't matter. But it's more about how can I have the right infrastructure around me and just be aware and do my best and try and always find as much balance as I can, but accept also that it won't always be there. Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind. We're expanding the offerings of the organization and we're tailoring everything we do to suit you guys and to try and answer to all of your needs and the questions that you send in. The book is available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbracks.com/book. And we've just released the Move Your Mind community. We've currently got a men's community group, a women's community group, a general group. We're going to be loading up other groups, and you can find all of the links at moveyourmind.me. This group's been created based on the needs of what we've heard and learnt throughout running Move Your Mind. And we have live events, we've got courses, we've got huge amounts of value, the ability to share information, share ideas, work in groups together to grow and share your learnings, to learn about different topics. You get email reminders. There's a whole lot of features in there. We're constantly updating it, and we're so excited to share it with you. You can find all of the information about it at moveyourmind.me.
And I think it's about adapting too. Like I know my life has certainly changed from, I could run a lot harder, or felt like I could anyway, before kids or as my career progressed and those stress levels. So not necessarily the physical demands, but the mental demands got a lot larger. I felt that my cup was a bit bigger in the past. I could do a bit more. So where going for a run once a day would be enough to sort of take the edge off, or have a glass of wine with my sisters or whatever. I find now that I'm looking for different things as well, and I'm quite open to different things. And like I said, listening to the podcasts and music or things like that have been great. But even recently, I've been reading a bit more around resilience and the just the mindful nature of our brains. And for someone who's incredibly competitive, it was for me, well, I'm not winning or I'm not getting it
Yeah.
right. And giving yourself permission to say, okay, not a great week, not a great moment at work, or I'm not really proud of how that went down, but looking forward rather than looking back, I've found is something I'm still working on. But even in that mindful space, sometimes I walk the dog and I just leave the phone at home. And
Yeah.
I do feel, maybe not as much as the kids, but I feel like I'm missing something. But not having music on or not having the phone, all of a sudden I don't know, talking to someone in the street or talking to the dog usually, or looking at looking at the water, or just, and then all of a sudden my brain's going, oh, don't forget when you get back, you need to prepare for that. And you've got to do that report and you've got to do this. Hang on, just look at the water, look at the water. So that practice, like I said, certainly not there yet, but trying to be a little bit less hard on myself than I have been, which maybe comes with a bit of age.
But it's a work in progress, and I'm similar to you, where it's that perfectionistic, competitive nature, and always, you strive for something, you get there, you look for the next thing, it never ends, and it's so hard to find the balance with that. But it's just about sort of trying to add these little things in, give yourself a little bit of time out occasionally, and it's a work in progress, but it's something, that we probably have to work on forever. Um,
Yes. And I
when it
think for,
Oh,
oh,
yeah, sorry,
sorry.
you go.
I
No,
was
you
going to
go.
say, for me, as I've become a manager and leading teams and leading people, I very much, and I'll blame my mum for this, but I very much pride myself on being genuine. So if I am having a bad week, I'll actually sometimes say, I spoke to one of my team just before, she said, how was yesterday? I said, oh, having a bit of a tough day, actually. And being genuine, I think it's really important. And sometimes, I may not be as polished as I want to be as a senior leader, but being genuine, it gives your team, gives my family, it gives my friends sort of the permission to be genuine as well. Because previously, I remember growing up, my parents are always, yeah, fine, fine, we're great. And,
Yeah.
my dad had a small business. My mum was a midwife. So sure, she probably saw some challenging things, but it was such a weakness to say, I'm having a bad day. And even in the way I deal with my teams, I try and be as genuine as I can. And sometimes in this industry, it's quite hard being a female and being genuine, because you don't want to be one of the boys, but you want to sort of be a bit of a senior leader, and
Mm.
it's not how I roll. This is me, and I think people appreciate that, and that makes sort of your mental health journey, I think, a little bit easier when people can see them, when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're high, when you're low, and that genuine nature hopefully gives other people permission to do the
Yeah,
same.
absolutely, and it makes you more of a leader, especially with females in the industry, and that being a talking point and something that well, actually, one of the things I want to ask you about, what are you seeing with that change of females in the industry? Traditionally, that it's been a very small percentage. Is that growing, and what's happening in that area?
Yeah, look, the conversation's growing and the awareness is growing, absolutely. So,
Hmm.
whereas I was traditionally quite often the only woman in the room, maybe there's two of us now, but unfortunately for me, I actually don't think it's as much a construction industry as it is a societal issue.
Mm.
I've got a sister who works in finance, and she said the higher up the tree she got, the less and less females she saw, which you'd like to think will change over time. But if I look at our industry, my daughter's just started engineering, and I said to her on the first day, "Oh, how many women were in the room?" And she said, "Oh, I think I counted six or seven." And I thought she meant percent. And she meant, no, no,
Mm.
six or seven women she was counting in the room. So we're
Well,
still not quite getting it right. I think part of our challenge is a bit of that, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So the
yeah.
majority of project leaders in Australia, the majority of senior leaders in the construction industry still remain men. That's slow to change. But young women coming up, both through trades and through that engineering front, the numbers are still quite low. So it really is something we need to focus on. We've got this huge amount of work coming. We've got an amazing pipeline. Like the renewables, like I said, back to the sustainability conversation, is so exciting. As much as there's a
Mm.
massive climate change challenge, there's huge opportunities for renewable projects in Australia, but we're not going to be able to deliver it with just the people we've got now. And so we definitely need to I hate to say the T word, we need to set some targets. We need to set some really brave targets, and we need to hold ourselves accountable, because a lot of people will say, oh, they're just not out there. Well, then, unless we start being brave and thinking outside the square and really challenging ourselves, we're going to be having this conversation in 10 years' time, 20
Mm.
years' time, 30 years' time. There's things we can do. We've got to really, as I say, put your shoulder to it. And we've got to make a change, because it is pretty slow to see the change. There's some companies doing some fabulous things. I know at John Holland, it is a huge focus of our business to really look at that gender equity and provide transparency. And, I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but hopefully by the time, my kids get out of school and hopefully one of them goes into renewables, which is what mum's encouraging, then,
Yeah.
maybe she'll see the change.
Lendlease is proudly sponsoring the Brick by Brick podcast. They're committed to the health and safety of their people and those they work with, and have been acknowledged externally for their focus on providing healthy workplaces. Lendlease is certified as a globally healthy workplace in recognition of their focus on employee health and well-being. In addition, Lendlease won the multinational employer category at the 6th Global Healthy Workplace Awards. They have a holistic approach to health and well-being and continue to grow their focus around mental health. Lendlease genuinely care and are out there not just to make a difference in their organisation, but in construction and society as a whole. We're very proud to have Lendlease as a sponsor of the Brick by Brick podcast. Yeah, and you'll be part of that change. And like you said, it's something that we need to not just talk about, but actually see action, and real action needs to be taken to make that change. So we finish every episode with 5 closing questions. These can be sort of whatever answer comes to mind, and just short sort of answers. Hopefully, nothing. Not going to throw you too far under the bus with these, but the first one
I still need
is
a job after this.
no. These, you should be fine. The first one is, what's your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
uh, it's not very OHSy, but my dad actually owned a petrol station, and when we were kids, Mum would drop us at the petrol station when she'd go off to the hospital, and we used to collect the money. So it's in the good old days where they put the petrol in the car and you'd run out and you'd get the cash. That is one of my favorite because A, we got to hang out with Dad, and B, I felt like as part of a business. I was probably about 5 running across the apron, but that was really cool to do that. That was a pretty fun memory.
I love that. I love those kind of memories. Yeah, it's such an authentic sort of simple thing that we all, they stay in your mind. Uh, so, being a focus on mental health with this podcast, what do you think in the construction industry is the biggest issue when it comes to mental health?
I think one of the biggest challenges we've got is the hours that we work. So there's a really big focus at the moment looking at project delivery, 5-day work weeks, and just almost, not almost, changing that paradigm of the fact that if you're not working 14 hours a day in the rain on a Saturday, then you're not productive. So changing that mindset around how work is done and what productivity actually looks like, I think will be a big shift towards mental health because people will be able to spend more time at home, they'll get more sleep, they'll have more family time, they won't have partners, challenged because they're at home with the kids. So
Mm.
I do think the hours that we work and how we measure productivity will be a big shift in our industry. And it's
And you,
happening.
yeah, well, you've answered part of the next question. Do you see mental health improving in the industry, and in 10, 20 years' time, where do you see that going? Do you see big change happening?
Oh, I think mental health is changing and has changed immensely since I joined the industry. It is every site you go onto now, it's a conversation topic. There's training, there's visibility. The stigma is absolutely melting away, and that's huge. We're, like you say, we're a predominantly male dominated industry, and if we make up a huge part of employment in Australia, and if we can have, people at work openly talking about mental health, let alone changes even in legislation around, psychosocial risks and things that once upon a time we either didn't talk about or didn't measure, is now an expectation of the workplace, and that's huge. I think it's
Mm.
changed immensely.
It's amazing to hear. Yeah, no, it is so great to see that change. So I've got two more questions here. What's your personal definition of happiness?
Oh wow! I think for me, it's a bit cliche. My family makes me happy, but also balance. So
Yeah.
if I'm balanced, I'm happy, and that balance isn't necessarily time at home. It's quality time with the family and my friends and work. When I have balance, which does happen, that's happiness for me.
I love that. Well, final one. What are you most proud of?
I, I'm really proud of my journey and my team's journey. So, and I say, I say that because my team makes me happy every day. I've got quite a big team that look after health, sustainability, and climate. And I'm so proud of what they do. They step up when we've got really big challenges, but they are also quite human and, dare I say, take the piss out of one another when we need to, and have a laugh, because I think if you can laugh and support one another, work's good, life's good, and you feel valued.
Great answer. I love that, and it is such an important thing. And actually, final thing, you mentioned something about the football before. Are you a Cats supporter? You mentioned the Cats.
I
Is
am a
that? Did I hear that?
huge cats. I am. I've got 2 kids, and both my husband's a Carlton supporter. But when we had the girls, it was around the time. So I'd never seen a grand final. And the 2007 grand final was happening, and one was in my tummy, but both my girls are cat supporters. And one of them turned around and said, "How come we don't barrack for the Blues?" This was a couple of years ago. I said, "Well, you can barrack for the Blues if you want." And they looked at the ladder and went, "Nah, we'll still barrack for the Cats."
I
Are
love
you a
that.
Geelong
Oh
supporter?
well, I like you even more now. Yes, I'm a Geelong supporter. So, my mum's the only one that's not. She's a Melbourne supporter, but we basically grew up with football being a religion, and I was at
Yeah,
the 94, 95 grand final as a sort of 8 year old crying on my dad's shoulders, and then
yeah.
obviously saw all the the recent years where they've had all the success, and yeah, it's been a huge part of my life. So,
And we're back.
very,
We're back.
and we're
this
back.
season.
Yep. I mean, amazing last year, obviously, and then yeah, I couldn't believe it. The turnaround this season, they're on, they found form again. So
I was a bit nervous.
yeah,
It was a bit of a rocky start.
it was.
But yeah, no, I do love the Cats. It's a family favourite here, except the kids hate coming home when Mum's watching it because I'm a bit vocal. But
You got to be good for the mental health. It's a good way to let some emotion out. Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, Michelle, thank you so much for making the time to come on here. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Very glad you're a Cat supporter, and yeah, I think our listeners will take a lot out of it. So I appreciate you making the time.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks to Michelle Nation for joining me today for Brick by Brick. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to nickbracks.com, or you can purchase the Movie Mind book at nickbracks.com/book.